Stand up. Right now, wherever you are. We are going to find out something about your bones before I tell you a single thing about the spice that can rebuild them. Because what you are about to feel in your own body matters far more than anything I could say. You are starting with a perfect score of 5 points. Every honest answer that goes against you costs 1 point. Be honest, no one is watching. This is between you and the skeleton that has carried you through every year of your life. Here is the first test. Stand tall, feet together, arms loose at your sides. Now slowly rise up onto the balls of both feet, lifting your heels off the floor. Hold it. Count to 10. Are your ankles steady and quiet, or do they wobble, drift, and beg you to drop back down before you reach 10? If you wobbled, if you reached for a wall, if you could not finish the count, take away 1 point. What you just felt is not clumsiness. It is a direct readout of the strength in the bones of your ankles, your shins, and the small stabilizing muscles wired into them. Second test. Hold out your dominant hand and make the tightest fist you can, as if you were gripping a jar lid that refuses to turn. Squeeze hard for 5 seconds. Does your grip feel powerful and certain, or weak and tiring almost immediately? Grip strength is one of the most studied predictors of skeletal strength in the entire body. A weak grip and weak bone travel together.
If your fist felt soft, subtract a point.
Third, think back over the last 2 years. Have you lost height? Has anyone said you seem shorter, or have your old trousers begun to pool at your feet? Quiet height loss is one of the earliest visible signs that the bones of the spine are silently compressing. If yes, subtract a point. Fourth, press your thumb firmly along the front of your shin, that long bone below the knee. Then, press into your forearm, wrist to elbow. Is there any deep tenderness, any ache that does not belong? Aching in the long bones can be the body whispering about thinning structure. If you felt it, subtract a point. Fifth and last, in the past 5 years, have you broken a bone, or had a doctor mention the words low bone density, osteopenia, or osteoporosis, or suggested a bone scan? If yes, subtract 1 final point. Now add up what is left. 5 means your skeleton is holding strong. 3 or 4 means the demolition has quietly begun to outpace the rebuilding. 2 or below means your bones are calling for help right now, today, this week. Whatever your number is, write it in the comments before you do anything else. Write it now. Not because I am collecting numbers, but because the moment you committed in writing, this stops being a video you are watching and becomes a promise you are making to your own body. And here is the most important thing I will say in the first minute. A low score is not a verdict. It is a starting line. Bone is the one major tissue in your entire body that can rebuild itself at any age, in your 50s, your 70s, your 80s. It is never finished, which means the number you just wrote is not where you end. It is where you begin. Now let me tell you what is coming. I'm going to show you why the single most common piece of bone advice on earth, take calcium, fails most of the people who follow it faithfully. And then, counting down through 4 pillars, I'm going to bring you to one overlooked spice that acts on what researchers quietly call the hidden architect of the skeleton, the system that decides whether the calcium you eat becomes strong bone or useless sediment. Stay with me to the end, because the spice is last, and it is last for a reason. Give me 60 seconds of science, because everything else depends on this. Reach down and press your shin one more time. It feels solid, permanent, like a dry stick. It is nothing of the sort. That bone is alive, crowded with cells, and at this very second it is being torn apart and rebuilt. There are 2 crews working inside you around the clock. The first crew is the osteoclasts.
Their entire job is demolition. They crawl across your bone and dissolve old, worn, microscopically cracked tissue, breaking it down and releasing its minerals back into the blood. The second crew is the osteoblasts, the construction crew. They follow behind, laying down fresh protein scaffolding and pulling calcium out of the blood to harden that scaffolding into new, strong bone. Tear down, rebuild, tear down, rebuild. All day, every day, your whole life. In youth, the building crew slightly outworks the demolition crew, and bones grow dense and strong. But somewhere in midlife, the balance tips. The demolition crew speeds up, the building crew slows down, and the gap between them is exactly what we call bone loss. After menopause, that gap can become a chasm. Women can lose up to 20% of their bone density in the 5 to 7 years following menopause. 20%, silently, with no pain and no warning, until the day a wrist or a hip simply gives way.
Now, here is why calcium alone betrays so many people. When you swallow a calcium tablet, that calcium enters your bloodstream. But calcium in the blood does not know where to go. It does not automatically march into your bones. It needs to be directed. And if it is not directed, it does not just sit there harmlessly. It drifts and deposits in the wrong places, hardening into the walls of your arteries while your bones stay starved. This is the cruel paradox researchers keep finding. People taking calcium with nothing to guide it can end up with stiffer arteries and no stronger bones. The calcium missed its target. It was a delivery truck with no address. So the real question of bone health was never how much calcium. It was always who is directing the calcium, and who is keeping the building crew working faster than the demolition crew. That is the hidden architecture. Hold on to that, because every pillar now points back to it. Pillar 4. Protein. Most people over 50 are quietly, chronically short on it, and almost no one connects it to their bones. Here is the part that surprises everyone. Roughly half of your bone by volume is not mineral at all. It is protein, mostly collagen, woven into a flexible scaffold. The calcium is just the hardening that coats that scaffold. So if you imagine reinforced concrete, calcium is the concrete, and protein is the steel rebar inside it. Concrete with no rebar is brittle and shatters. That is a bone built on calcium with no protein behind it. The mechanism is direct. Your osteoblasts cannot lay down new bone matrix without a steady supply of amino acids from the protein you eat. Starve them, and the construction simply halts, no matter how much calcium floats by. The measurable feedback comes slowly here, over many weeks, as a returning steadiness in your grip and your stance, as muscle and bone scaffold rebuild together. The common mistake is treating protein as something only young athletes need, and eating a breakfast of toast and coffee with almost none. The modification, if you have any kidney condition, is simple. Do not guess. Ask your doctor what protein target is safe for you, then aim for it at every meal, not just dinner, because your body cannot store it for later. Between pillars, let this land. Studies measuring grip strength, the very thing you tested 90 seconds ago, find that a weaker grip predicts a meaningfully higher risk of future fracture. Your hand was telling you about your hip. Pillar 3. Vitamin D. This is the gatekeeper, because without it, the calcium you eat barely gets through the door. Here is the mechanism. The calcium in your food cannot cross the wall of your intestine and enter your blood on its own. It needs vitamin D to act as the key that unlocks absorption. When vitamin D is low, you can eat all the calcium you want and absorb only a fraction of it. The rest passes straight through you, wasted. This is the silent reason so many people do everything right and still lose bone. They are not absorbing what they eat. The feedback is harder to feel directly, which is exactly why it is dangerous, and why a simple blood test is worth more than a guess. The common mistake is assuming sunlight alone covers it, when older skin makes far less vitamin D from sun, and a person who covers up or lives through long gray winters may run low for years without knowing. The modification again is to test rather than megadose blindly, because this is a vitamin where more is not endlessly better. Pillar 2. And now we are close to the architecture itself. Vitamin K2. This is the traffic director, the address on the delivery truck. Remember the problem. Calcium in the blood does not know where to go. Vitamin K2 is what activates the proteins that physically grab that calcium and escort it into your bones, while keeping it out of your arteries. The mechanism is precise. K2 switches on a protein called osteocalcin, made by your building crew, and osteocalcin is the hand that binds calcium into the bone matrix. Without K2, that protein stays dormant, inactive, unable to do its one job. This is the cofactor almost no one is told about. There are estimates that without adequate K2, a large share of the calcium you consume never reaches the skeleton at all and goes looking for somewhere else to settle. The feedback here is long and invisible, measured over months in scans, not sensations. So trust the mechanism rather than waiting to feel it. The common mistake is taking calcium and vitamin D faithfully while ignoring K2 entirely, which is like hiring a delivery service and forgetting to write the address. The modification matters here. If you take a blood thinner, particularly the older kind, vitamin K directly affects how that drug works. So you must not add K2 without talking to the doctor who manages that medication. This is the one pillar where going it alone can be genuinely unsafe. And now we slow down, because we have arrived at the first pillar, the one I asked you to wait for, the spice. Turmeric, and more precisely the deep golden compound inside it called curcumin, the same compound that stains your fingers and colors curry. Why does it sit at the top, above protein, above vitamin D, even above the traffic director K2? Because while those four feed and direct the building site, turmeric acts on the workers themselves. It speaks to both crews at once. Here is the mechanism, and it is worth saying slowly. Curcumin appears to lean on the demolition crew, the osteoclasts, calming their activity so they stop tearing bone down faster than it can be replaced. And at the same time, in laboratory studies, curcumin appears to encourage the building crew, the osteoblasts, to differentiate and get to work, partly by waking up a cellular signaling pathway, the WNT pathway, that tells precursor cells to become bone builders. Quiet the demolition, wake the construction. That is the whole game of bone, and this single spice seems to nudge both levers in the right direction at once. Now, I owe you complete honesty, because you are an intelligent adult, and the trust between us is the entire point. The strongest evidence for curcumin in bone so far comes from laboratory and animal studies, where the effects on bone-building cells are clear and repeatable. The human studies are genuinely mixed. Some small trials in older adults with low bone density have reported measurable improvement in density readings over 6 months. Other careful, well-run trials in postmenopausal women have found no significant change in bone density at the doses tested. So I will not promise you that a spoon of turmeric rebuilds your hip. What I will tell you, accurately, is that the mechanism is real and well mapped. The safety at food levels is excellent, and the most reasonable reading of the science is that turmeric belongs in a complete bone-building system, not as a miracle standing alone. That honesty is exactly why it is pillar 1 and not a magic cure. The common mistake with turmeric is the one that wastes almost everyone's effort. Curcumin is famously hard for your body to absorb. Eaten by itself, most of it passes straight through. But there is a beautiful, almost absurd fix that researchers confirmed long ago. A compound in ordinary black pepper, piperine, dramatically increases how much curcumin your body absorbs. So, turmeric without black pepper is a key with no hand to turn it. Always pair them. The second part of the fix is fat. Curcumin dissolves in fat, not water, so a little olive oil, yogurt, or whole milk alongside it carries far more of it into you. The modification for sensitive stomachs is to start with a small amount stirred into food rather than a concentrated supplement. And if you take blood thinners or gallbladder medication, or you are heading for surgery, clear it first, because even a food-based compound this active deserves that respect. So that is the architecture. Protein for the scaffold, vitamin D to open the door, K2 to direct the calcium home, and turmeric to quiet the demolition and wake the builders. Now let me give you 4 things you can change this very week. Small enough to start tomorrow, big enough to matter. The first is hiding in your morning. If your day begins with 2 or 3 cups of coffee and very little else, caffeine in large amounts modestly increases how much calcium you lose. And an empty, mineral-poor breakfast gives your bones nothing to work with. The swap is not to quit coffee. It is to anchor it to food. A real breakfast with protein and something green. So the day starts with deposit instead of withdrawal. The second is a movement almost everyone over 50 quietly stops doing. Impact. Your bones are not stupid. They build density only where they are loaded, where they feel force. Swimming and cycling are wonderful for the heart, but send almost no signal to bone, because there is no impact. The fix is gentle, deliberate loading. Walking with purpose. Rising onto your toes and dropping your heels. Carrying your own groceries instead of rolling them.
Every footfall and every lift is a message to your skeleton that says, "You are still needed. Stay strong." Bone obeys that message. The third is about timing, and it is subtle. Certain foods, healthy ones, can block mineral absorption when eaten at the wrong moment. The bran in some whole grains, and the oxalates in foods like spinach, bind to calcium and carry it out before it can be absorbed. You do not stop eating them. You simply separate them, by an hour or two, from the meal or supplement where you are trying to get calcium in. Same foods, different clock, completely different result. The fourth happens while you sleep. When you are chronically stressed and under-rested, your body runs high on a hormone called cortisol, and cortisol quietly tells the demolition crew to work harder and the building crew to slow down. Poor sleep, night after night, is bone loss you cannot see. Protecting your sleep is not soft advice.
It is a direct order to your skeleton to keep building through the night instead of tearing down. So here is your permanent rule, your operating system, not a diet you will abandon by spring. Once a day, at your evening meal, stir turmeric into your food with a crack of black pepper and a little fat to carry it. Beside it, the cofactors that direct the work, with your doctor's blessing where medication is involved. And sometime in that day, give your bones the load they are begging for. Even 30 seconds of rising onto your toes by the kitchen counter while the kettle boils. Spice, cofactor, load. Every day. That is the whole system. Now look back at the number you wrote at the start. That number is not who you are. It is where you are starting from. And bone, unlike almost everything else in the body, rebuilds slowly but genuinely at any age. Be honest about the timeline.
Your circulation can change in days, but bone answers on its own slower calendar. So give this a true 30 days before you expect to feel the difference, and longer still before a scan would show it. Set the window honestly, and the results will be honest too. In 30 days, come back and retest. Rise onto your toes and count to 10. Make that fist. See if the wobble has quieted, if the grip holds the jar without strain. Then tell me your new number. And do one last thing. Send this to one person, just one, who has ever feared a fall, or mentioned a bone scan, or grabbed for a railing a little too tightly. Not a wide, careless share. One person who needs it. That is how this actually reaches the people it can help.
Press your shin one more time before you go. That bone has held you upright through every single year of your life, through every step and stumble and recovery. It never once asked for anything. Now, finally, you know exactly how to rebuild it. Be kind to it. It has earned it.